Good morning.
Good morning, Dean Massey. I'm so sorry about that.
My apologies. I don't know why this has been so difficult. I've been using Zoom since the university got it. My apologies.
No worries. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone also for your patience. You know, technical issues happen, right, with Zoom. Maybe it's temperamental today. So we do appreciate you coming. So my name is David Cerna. For everyone here, I am with the Center for the Advancement of Learning. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dean Massey for our impact session this morning. So this is called Faculty Evaluation Planning, Precursors to Narrative Development. And April Massey serves proudly as Dean of the University of the District of Columbia College of Arts and Sciences. A speech-language pathologist by discipline, Dr. Massey uses her training and professional experiences to shape possibilities for excellence in student, faculty, and staff outcomes. Leveraging opportunities provided through Campus Compact of the Mid-Atlantic, American Association of University Women, American Association of Colleges and Universities, and Brookings. She has built infrastructure for initiatives in leadership and women's leadership, faculty development, scholarship of teaching and learning, general education, assessment, performance review, and community embedded pedagogies. Her signature programs, Dialogues in Leadership, Hear Me Lead, CAS Reads Big, and Faculty Learning Circles have garnered broad interest and created national networks of opportunity for the college. Dr. Massey has been recognized by the University of the District of Columbia National Student Speech Language Hearing Association, University of Cincinnati, and Howard University. Her DIL initiative was recently adopted by the University of Texas at El Paso. Dr. Massey represents the Office of Diversity and Inclusion in Ohio State University's newly established volunteer leader community. And she supports scholarships for first-generation students and UDC speech language pathology trainees. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dean Massey. A couple just housekeeping things for Zoom webinar. You may have noticed if you are an attendee today, the Zoom webinar looks different than a usual Zoom workshop session. So just to quickly go over this, you will see that chat icon on your toolbar. If you click on that, you're able to chat and participate throughout. You can also raise your hand during the session if you'd like to ask Dean Massey a question. Once you raise your hand, we can go ahead and unmute you. And at the end of our workshop, I will help to facilitate our Q&A session. If you would like to contribute a question for Dean Massey, just go ahead and click on that Q&A icon on your toolbar and we'll be able to receive your questions. So with that, I am so happy to introduce Dean Massey, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And I hope to, at some point, be able to meet you in person soon because you're one of the newer employees to the university. And I've received a lot of email from you and we've corresponded around this, but I've not had an opportunity to meet you. So thank you so much. You've been very helpful. Good morning, everybody. And again, my apologies. I try not to be late for these kinds of things. I just couldn't get into the Zoom opportunity. So what I want to do is I want to use this time to talk about evaluation, but I want to talk about evaluation from a precursory perspective. I think at the institution, we spend a lot of time focused on the narrative, and then of course, the ratings. But it's the work that happens long before either of those two pieces are actualized that determines how they come together. And so I know all of you have already participated in your mandatory first planning session with your division or department or program chairs. So I want to walk us through, we're going to do 4 things today. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the 8th Master Agreement faculty evaluation section, that's Article 15. And we're going to talk about the principles of evaluation and the precursory pieces, including the predetermined criteria. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about fine-tuning your professional introduction, because that is your intro to evaluation planning, how you see yourself as an academic on the campus of UDC, and how when you encounter people face-to-face, in writing, digitally, who you say you are as a part of this campus community. The second piece we'll do that I just described, we're going to talk about applying the faculty contract in evaluation planning. We talk about applying the faculty contract in the narrative development, in the assessment of the faculty member, the application of the scoring. But we don't spend as much time there when we want to talk about how do we actually use the contract to help us structure the process of evaluation and give management and the faculty member a running start in a real success opportunity for the institution. The third thing that we're going to do is I have a couple of forms, a form that I want to share with you that we've been using in the College of Arts and Sciences that really helps document the planning phase of evaluation. And if that document is completed in a way that truly does summarize the planning and the conversations faculty member and chair, in January, when you're ready to start finalizing your narrative, you already have the blueprint, you have the outline, you have much of the draft of the document that you will be submitting in February. And the last thing we want to do is really talk about how you can ensure that rather than spend the month of January, first half of February, trying to find documentation of your work, trying to piece together the argument for the score that you believe that you've earned across the year. This summary document has all of those pieces already laid out. So from that September meeting required by the contract through to the date when you actually submit, you've been using this document as a living archive that helps you understand who you say you are, how you show up, and what you intend to use that value to do across this evaluation planning period. So David, given all the difficulty that I had coming into this meeting, I'm a little concerned about going out of this to try to find my first document, which would be the 8th Master Agreement. I want to go to section 15, Article 15, that I think starts on page 30. I could be wrong about that. I have it here, and I can
Okay.
get to.
I can also put it on the screen. So page 30.
If you can put it on the screen, let me just make sure I'm starting in the right place.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately for me, it's just spinning on this. So maybe it's my, so it's a little before that because that's already into the ratings. If we could go back a bit.
Yes.
We want to go to the actual first page of the evaluation article.
Right
There
here.
we go.
Okay.
Yes.
And let me make this bigger.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you so much. What I want to focus on is the general provisions section, because I think that this is a part of the contract evaluation procedure, Article 15, that gets glossed over. But this is really the defining portion of what evaluation is on UDC's campus. The general provisions lay out three important pieces. One, evaluation is a requirement of all full-time continuing faculty members at the university. So if you have a full-time continuing position as an instructor, assistant professor, associate professor, or full professor, you are required to do the work of annual evaluation with a few exceptions. If you're in a leave category, you would likely be exempt from annual evaluation for that period. And if you are planning to separate from the university at the end of an academic year, you would likely be able to negotiate an exemption from participating in the annual evaluation for that year. But I think it's important that everybody understand that this is a requirement. Now, what happens if I'm a visitor? If I'm a visiting faculty member in any one of the colleges or schools, there is no required evaluation system for me. So if I'm a visitor, I'm going to take advantage of this evaluation system if I'm invited in by my chair to do so, because it gives you an opportunity to have a record of your performance and your value added for the period, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything to take away at the end of the year. The second, and maybe this is the first important thing that's laid out in these general provisions, is that evaluation is meant to be a partnership across the faculty member and the university. And remember, the outcome here is not about what happens to you, what happens to your chair, what happens to your dean. It really is about the collective cooperation of all of the pieces to ensure that what happens for our students is optimized. And so it's about a partnership that's leading to our best outcomes around institutional effectiveness. Now, the third piece that the general provisions lay out that's really important, but I think it gets glossed over, is the information around predetermined criteria. And the information around predetermined criteria is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, discussions about predetermined criteria actually help us remember that the clock for annual faculty evaluation doesn't start in that evaluation year. It actually starts in the spring of the prior year when faculty members in programs, that's important to hear, faculty members in their programs with their program peers are investigating the ways that best align with how they are expected to work and be evaluated. And you're using standards at the national level, you're looking at industry markers, you're looking at benchmarks for student outcomes. This is really important because when people position evaluation as a gotcha moment for management, it means that there's missed opportunity in how both management and faculty have come to the table to understand. If the opportunity for the real outcome of evaluation is missed, that means we fail to serve our students optimally. But if we capture the opportunity of the real success moment of evaluation, it means that faculty members have been the guiding force in helping their managers understand the metrics against which they should be evaluated. Now, this is a negotiation, so it's not just one party saying to the other, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to be evaluated. It's bringing data-based information to the table, all sides. Because remember, PDC are set at 3 levels. They're set at the level of the chief academic officer. And so Dr. Potter provided guidance for his for university level PDC on the 16th and 17th of August. In your colleges and schools, your dean should have provided PDC in the days that followed the opening meetings at the level of the provost. And so between the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, PDC at the college and school level should have been set and communicated. You're going to be, you had meetings in your programs, divisions, departments with your chairs. There was a finalization of the conversations that you started as program faculty in the spring. And so the program level PDC were finalized in those early meetings at the end of August, beginning of September. And so on the form that I'm going to show you, you're going to see that the most important piece of this is that if you are being evaluated, everybody that's participating in the evaluation cycle should know the standards against which faculty members are being, your value is being assessed. And so the form that I'm going to show you actually inputs those pieces. David, if you could scroll to, I think it's the timeline, please, that will come up. Here we go. And so you can see here from points 1, you see that the previous academic year becomes really important. Now they identify here it's important for the PDC discussion that I had, but it's also important because you'll submit a portfolio in February, which means that you don't have the benefit of all of academic year 21-22 in terms of student feedback. So you'll pull course evaluation from the spring of 21 and course evaluation from the fall of 21 that will go into your documentation for academic year 21-22. And so it's really important to make sure that you drill into, it's not just about memorizing the dates, but understanding why these dates are important, what these dates allow to happen on your behalf. So you see the professional development at the level of the C.A.L, what the obligation of the university is. You see it within the colleges and schools. You see what the obligation is. You see the responsibility to have DEPC selected timely. In the first and second weeks of September, David, if you could scroll just a little bit, you will see that you have a contract-driven responsibility to meet with your chairs to talk about your goals, weights, and measures. The important thing to remember here is you're not trying to align your goals and weights with your workload, because your workload by PUs is not going to be a one-to-one alignment with how you identify your emphasis in an evaluation cycle. So that's really important to remember, because people always want to make, okay, well, I'm going to make this 60% because this is how it looks at in my PUs. It doesn't align. So what you're thinking about when you're thinking about evaluation is, where do I want the strongest, what am I emphasizing across this year? So if you have a large scholarly project that's going to garner certain kinds of outcomes for you and products that speak value for your contributions, your emphasis, you're going to probably max what you could have in terms of weights for scholarship. Let's say that you have a major teaching learning initiative on the table, and you've engaged not only your UDC peers, but if you have engaged peers across the nation. Let's say you're a political scientist, and so you've created a cooperative of political scientists across the nation looking at a specific pedagogy for political science majors in the senior year. And so while that's scholarship, but scholarship of teaching. And so you might want to put your weights most heavily on the teaching side. What if you have a community embedded project that takes your scholarly value into the community and can be positioned under community service? You might want to max, you can't max like override your responsibilities in teaching and scholarship, but you can give the maximum weight allowable under the contract to your service. And those are the things that you want to be able to talk about. So I think that it's really important to make sure that you have a complete understanding of the ways that the contract lays the groundwork for supporting your evaluation experience. If you miss the opportunity of understanding that it's relational, if you miss the opportunity of understanding the PDC, if you miss the opportunity of understanding when the calendar of evaluation is set in motion, then you'll arrive at the February deadline for submission well behind the 8 ball in terms of planting good outcomes that ensure success, because the contract requires 2 meetings with your chair in the fall semester. So you would meet sometime between end of August and middle of September. You would meet again sometime in the month of October, not later than the first week of November, right? Those meetings are intended for you to use that chairperson as a sounding board around your ideas, your path to achieving them, resources that you might need, how the institution can support your success. When you don't have those meetings, you don't have the benefit of that early formative feedback that gives you the summative outcome that moves you toward the success outcome that you're reaching for. So David, can I go to, I have 2 matrices. I want to go to the one that I think says, not the one I sent you earlier this morning, but there's a
Matrix number
first.
2.
I think that, yes.
This one, okay.
And I do think I saw that somebody had a question. Did I see that somebody wrote you that they had a question?
Yes, so the question we can answer is, what do you mean by PDC?
Okay, so now that scares me that we're in October and somebody's asking me that. So if you look at the provisions section of the contract, it speaks to predetermined criteria. You can replace that with the word standards. So standards for evaluation. We are obligated, and you're going to see on the second page of this document where I identify the standards that have been set by Dr. Potter, that I have set for the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm a speech pathologist by profession, so I have my program approved standards or predetermined criteria for me. And I'm responsible across this evaluation period for answering to these standards that as an institution, we have agreed to. So Dr. Potter has provided his standards. We heard them. We've agreed, we've accepted that these are the standards institution-wide that we all are being guided by. Now remember, it's not a hard and fast that you have to tick every standard, but you do have to have work that is responsive to the expectations for value added for the institution. And on some years, that's going to be higher level. Dr. Potter's communicated PDC speak to instructional pedagogies and technology. And the second one I'm blanking on, but we'll get to it in a minute. In the College of Arts and Sciences, I have some very specific around assessment and continuous assessment and ways that we demonstrate that the work that we're doing in our classrooms that they feed. In speech pathology, the PDC are very specific to evidence-based practice, interprofessional collaboration. And so when I drill down on what I actually have as my plan here, you will see that there's no direct hit the box, every box. But you clearly see that my intended work seamlessly aligns with the ways that the institution at all of those levels has identified value add in the ways that I have agreed to fit under those expectations. So a year or two ago, I developed this form, and I developed this form because I felt like when we get to the rating side of evaluation, you'll see pushback when people don't receive a score that they think they've earned. But I've never had anybody come to me and say, I'm feeling like there's a disconnect between the standards that I'm to be evaluated by, based on, and the ways that the narrative in terms of the, at every level, you're responsible for providing a narrative, a rationale, right? No one's ever said that to me. Now, if I'm in a faculty seat and my chair, Dr. Anika Burton is my chair, I get a rating from Dr. Burton, and they say she gives me a 2, which is a meets expectations, which is a credible score. But let's say in her feedback to me, she responds to another set of standards that are not the standards referenced by the C.A.L, that are not the standards referenced by the dean, that are not the standards referenced by my program faculty. That's a point of dig in for me. Okay, no, you're right. If you're evaluating me based on this set of standards that you have over here, no, I didn't answer to those things, because the approved set of standards for the university, for the college, for my program are these. And I'm going to now walk you through point by point for why I am certain that I met these. And that's why PDC become extremely important, because talk about partnership, talk about relationship, that's the point of agreement. And that's the place that we cannot walk back on. If we've agreed, we understand that it's all been published, those are the pieces of the work that we have to do. So I hope that I answered the person's question. So you see here that I'm saying that I had my first meeting with Dr. Burton on September the 3rd. This form is important because I sign it, she would sign it. And so there's no denying that we met and had a conversation. And then on the next pages, you will see that we document what it is that we talked about. So we can go to the next page. So one of the things that I think is really important to have the PDC actually written out so everybody sees. And this form for me will become the cover page of my narrative when I submit in February. If I was submitting, this becomes my cover page. So you see from Dr. Potter, there are 2 predetermined criteria or standards for the 2021-2022 evaluation period. He made a choice that those evaluation standards that were identified for the 2020-2021 academic year continue to be relevant. So he wants an increase in proficiency and engagement with technology platforms to enhance student learning and their experience. He also identifies, and this is not Dr. Potter just talking, he's looked at data-based sets of information. He's looked across the year at institutional practices, and he's arrived at these places that we need to be moving as an institution to get the best outcomes for the end of the line user, our students. If you could let me just close the door. My husband has decided to make lunch. My apologies. So, and the second is achieve significant progress in research and creative activity as measured by national standards to advance the university's teaching, research, and service missions. Now, these are very broad. It's going to be the rare person that's going to have work that cannot be fit under these. So those were established in August and that we all conform under. For the College of Arts and Sciences, I shared with my faculty when we met on the 18th that we have 4 standards that we're working under. Faculty excellence, embedding local and external peer review in your teaching, research, and service. This can be as basic as cooperatives that faculty members grow organically, where you meet in a writing group or a reading group or a research group, and you read each other's work and you give feedback. It could also mean that you are presenting at national conferences, international conferences, peer reviewed to have your papers accepted. That's another level. But in embedding ways to demonstrate your value beyond what you say is good, right? Program and curricular quality, connecting benchmarks of curriculum quality to teaching, research, and service. Infrastructure adequacy. Have you identified what would allow you to work optimally on behalf of your students? That can be technology. That can be the actual physical space of a room that you're in. That can be any of a number of things. That can be stipends for research assistants. So infrastructure adequacy crosses so many different things. So my point here is you can see that these are broad opportunities. We're not trying to pigeonhole people into answering to specific things that a dean or a provost comes up with. These are data-driven expectations with wide evidence to support within the institution, UDC, and across the nation in terms of how higher ed best moves in support of students. And so then finally, the predetermined criteria or standards for me as a speech pathologist. I'm in a discipline, I think I have 6 or 7 or 8 colleagues in speech pathology. And these are driven by the industry standards of my discipline. So the American Association, the American Speech Language Hearing Association, the accreditor for speech language pathology programs. These are the things they want: academic and industry standards. You have to show in your work that you are actually preparing students to meet the standards that they're going to work by, right? So you can't just offer a program that's off here and very theoretical. You have to make sure that your student outcomes respond to these things. Accreditor requirements, they have to be my teaching, my syllabi, my student learning outcomes have to align. Student excellence, I've got to build in responsibility to make sure that my students not only get exposure to the content, but that I give them real opportunities to engage with it in ways, there's practice, there's feedback, there's reflection that moves them toward independent professional work. Community interests, got to be able to take the work that I do and help my students understand the work of a scholar is not confined to the academy. You've got to be community engaged. And then development of partnerships and other opportunities to help grow the understanding that these disciplines don't work in silos and that there's an expectation of interprofessional collaboration at all levels, at the practice level, at the service level, teaching and scholarship. And so I hope I answered for the PDC person, and I can stop at any point and help people understand, and I'm willing to share this form with anybody that wants to just to be able to see it. This form is very individualized, so it's not like you can duplicate it, but it clearly can help you understand the ways that you position yourself for success in evaluation by starting with a planning phase that is very well defined and documented. If we could go to the next page. And so one of the things that this form requires for those people who choose to use it is a 500-word, not longer than a 500-word statement of intent for the period. If you can write this down now, when you start to write your narrative, so already I have the first 2 pages of my narrative written. The PDC, that's page 1, right? A statement of intent about how I intend to work to meet those expectations, that's my page 2. So you will see here that I have defined very specifically. Now I've given myself a lot of flexibility because my work for this year is built around a project that engages me with 3 peers and then a broader circle of 8 peers to do work around what will eventually lead to a book. But there's a training piece that's embedded that will include work with students across a couple of disciplines. And that will also take us into the community to help train early childhood educators who are engaging with young children who may have disorders of language. And so you can see that I very specifically and explicitly lay out my intent for my year, but I give myself the flexibility because this is a discovery process in terms of we've got some case studies to do, we've got some reflective exercises we're going to do, we've got a rubric to score some things, and those pieces of feedback will help shape final outcomes. So I give myself a little bit of space to ensure that I can get to the end, achieve my outcomes, but give myself opportunity to learn from the process of discovery across the year and tweak the outcomes so that they best serve students in training, professionals already in practice, including teachers of young children who educate not just children, but also do parent training around language development and what the early stages of language learning have in terms of implications for later stage language learning. So I have a section for my weight. So you see my teaching weight is 50%. And if you can scroll for me, David. And I identify my teaching goals for the year. They're aligned with my unit PDC, and you can see that they are also intimately connected to my scholarship and my service. And so I talk about that I'm going to collaborate with these colleagues. I talk about what we're going to have as outcomes. I talk about the potential impacts. For my scholarship weight, you see that I've weighted it at 30%. I also have my scholarship goal defined, and I talk about what my outcomes are going to be. For my service weight, I have it defined at 20%. I have defined what my service goals are going to be, if you can scroll just a little bit, and what the outcomes for me will be for this academic year. Now, the signatures on the front page, mine and Dr. Burton, signify that we both looked at this. If she had any feedback for me, it would be embedded in these boxes. And so it gets captured, it's formalized, and it's what we're going to live by. In the absence of this, I can say I had a conversation with my chair. I can say what we talked about, but I don't have any way to formally document that indeed that's what happened. These were the outcomes. This is what's suggested. The important thing to remember is that this meeting is required under the contract. It's required for the manager. It's required for the faculty person. The contract gives flexibility in how the meetings happen, how they are documented or not. But me as the faculty person, I think it's really important, not just because I have a record to say, no, this is what we agreed on, but I have a blueprint for the work that I'm going to do. So now across the year, I'm going to keep going back to the very beginning, and I'm going to grow from that, and I'm going to document my growth across the way. So remember, this first meeting, the September meeting, it's already happened. It was required. The second meeting in October also required. David, if I could go to the second matrix.
Yes, let me bring that up now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And this is the one from this morning, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And so you see now that I have input my second meeting. So that would be next Monday. I'm forecasting that's when my meeting is going to be. But if we can scroll down to, I think it's the 3rd page of this document. Next down. Yes, so we can scroll down just a little bit more. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you're at the right place. Go back up, I'm sorry. So you can see now what I have done is I've put in dates, outcomes, recommendations. So from the September 3rd meeting, my goals were defined, the interrelationship of my teaching, scholarship, and service is described. For the October 18 meeting, I'm forecasting that I'm going to be, I'm talking about what I'm going to be discussing with Dr. Burton. So one of the things that I've already done is I met with my collaborators. We identified the classes that we're going to use to pilot the cases that we're developing. So you have all of the classes across the entire academic year. We assigned who's writing which cases. We set a deadline for the first draft of the cases. We also set a deadline for the draft of the case assessment rubric and the companion reflective practice exercise. And then we have to establish the interprofessional collaborative partners. We say where they're coming from, they're already there. And then a draft of that training module and a draft of the assessment rubric and companion reflective practice exercise for the IPC. I've done the same things for my scholarship. You can see that I've documented the first meeting when it was. What we did at that first meeting, all we did was define goals. At the second meeting, I'm projecting that we're going to, can I have you scroll down just a bit, David? At the second meeting, I'm projecting that what we're going to do is have the case profile defined. That's what I'm going to talk to her about, that we actually, when we met 2 weeks ago, we actually defined what the cases would include. So I'm going to talk to her about that. I'm going to talk to her about the draft deadline. There are chapter assignments, because remember, the end goal is that this becomes a book. It's a pocket guide for clinicians in training, new clinicians, and early childhood educators. And so the chapter assignments were made, the draft for when they have to come in, the date for when the drafts have to come in, potential publishers list when that's due, so we can discuss that at our next meeting. And then when we met 2 weeks ago, we talked about the publishing option. So we had originally been thinking about a print a book. But the more we talked about the need to actually make the reader able to hear and see what these language practices look like, early childhood, not just the child, but the caregiver interacting with the child, we thought, this needs to be dynamic, it needs to be interactive. And so maybe we're looking at a digital version that maybe has a print companion, but so we got to think about that. And so those are the things that we're talking about. And then on the last, on the service side, you can see that we, what I'm going to be talking to her about is the draft training scenario. So one of the things that we talked about in our meeting was, what is it that we need to make sure that we cover with these providers in the training? Now, most of that scenario was already written. If you go back to my 500-word statement of introducing my work for this year, I already identified the metrics against which this has to be established. And that's the level of alignment that you want to be able to see across this. So when I get to the point of submitting my narrative in February, there will be no surprises on either side. Now, if I want to be focused on evaluation ratings and I want to be focused on my scores and I want to put my stake in the ground on a 3 composite score, then I got to be really clear about how anything that I've written here corresponds with what the description for a rating of 3 scholarship teaching service must be. But I have identified here everything that I say I'm going to do. And so I should be able to walk my way forward into an expectation of a score. So I want to go back out and then I want to look to see who's in the room, because I didn't do a good job of welcoming people and giving us a chance to kind of see each other. And then there's an exercise that I want to do with you. And then I'll be available for any questions. I think we have about 15 minutes. Then I'll make myself available to any questions that you have. And so thus far in the college, I've done 4 of these trainings this term. And the biggest group, I think, was about 15, and the smallest was about 8. And the group of 8 has decided I'm going to do, it's a series of 3 trainings that I'm doing that will walk my faculty members up to the point of submission of their narratives in February. And so the small group of 8 decided that they were going to make a cohort, and they were going to stay together, and they were going to attend all of the trainings with me together, and they were going to continue to work together. So David, is it possible for me to see everybody in the room?
Yeah, so what I'll do is, since we're in a webinar, I'm going to make everyone a panelist, so you'll be able to see them.
Okay.
So you should see an invitation if you are an attendee that you have been promoted to a panelist. So let me go ahead and go down the list.
And I just have to say, you must have the neatest office on the campus.
You know, I like to keep it neat, you know, like the way that I organize my thoughts, right? So
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have been promoted to a panelist, you can go ahead and turn on your cameras. Hello, Fatma. Nice to see smiling faces as well. Right. And as a panelist, you can also unmute at any time if you'd like to say anything. Right.
So what I'd like to do, and there's some people in the room that I know well, so I'm not going to pick on them. And so Dr. Day would be familiar with the exercise that I'm about to walk people through, as would Dr. Morrison and Dr. Rasayan and Professor Preta and Professor Pippen. So I'm going to probably use as a guinea pig somebody that's in my college, because they know my style and I don't think they will be bothered by it. So Professor St. Cyr, can I call on you? And I'm going to tell you what I'm asking you to do.
Yes.
I think one of the things that really helps prepare for thinking about evaluation is having a clear understanding of how you see yourself as an academic. And, you know, we're on campuses all the time and we're talking to each other all the time, but you don't often get asked to do a professional self-intro, right? And so everybody needs to have prepared about a 30-second elevator introduction that really does a comprehensive storytelling of your value in your most compelling way. So St. Cyr is really sorry now that she unmuted and agreed to do this. So Professor St. Cyr, what I want you to do is I want you to introduce yourself. And what I want you to think about is, as you prepare for evaluation, as you're in this cycle now, what's the story of value of Professor Dorothy Gaspard St. Cyr that you want to make sure that everybody that encountered you? So if you ran into President Mason in the elevator and he said, "Hey, I don't think I know you. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?" And what you don't know is that he's got a $50,000 grant in his pocket and he's looking for innovation and creativity and something new, somebody that really understands and can sell themselves quickly. Let me hear you do that. 30 seconds. Don't try not to go beyond. Stay clean. Don't meander. Don't go deep. Drill into, and I do this and I do this. And not what I'm asking you for. I'm asking you for a very high level description that makes me know explicitly who you are and what you do.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon now. My name is Dorothy Gaspard St. Cyr. I'm a clinical instructor in the Department of Speech Language Pathology. I teach a clinical didactic as well as communication modalities course. And through my clinical didactic as well as the communication modalities course, my goal is to educate our students, bring them forward with new and innovative technology, while also making sure that they adhere to best practices in speech language pathology and communicate with their parents. I think effective communication is critical and important in what we do, as well as parent training and student leadership and organization trainings as well.
Okay, so I'm going to push back on Dorothy.
Yes,
And she knows me very well, so this is not going to offend her. So if I'm President Mason, I don't know what you're talking about when you drill into communication modalities course and a clinical didactic. So you might have lost him at that point.
Okay.
But if you said this, if you said that I'm Dorothy Gaspard St. Cyr, I'm a clinical instructor in the speech and language pathology program. As you know, we are a graduate only program and my role focuses on bridging theory to practice. I have specific responsibility for making sure that students are able to engage around blank, blank, and blank, right? President Mason, I know that you're aware that we're transitioning to a new speech and hearing clinic that actually opens us up to a broader service to the community. My specific role as the daughter of Haitian immigrants, bilingual, multicultural, is to tie us uniquely to the populations of blank, blank, and blank across DC where we could. And so that's the compelling story of Dorothy Gaspard St. Cyr.
She does that so well. Okay, thank you.
So is there anybody else that wants to volunteer? Thank you, Dorothy. She's always such a willing sport. Is there anybody else that wants to volunteer who hasn't already done this exercise with me?
Yeah, I see Jita Pippen has raised her hand. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Professor Pippen, you've done this with me, Pippen.
Yes, I have done it, but I'm just going to briefly say my name is Geeta Pippen and I'm an instructor in math department, also math department lab manager. Our goal is to not only to serve students who are currently taking math courses, but across university, anybody from different schools and college that they need help, we are there to help them to improve their academic, to achieve their academic goal.
So, okay, and I know Professor Pippen very well too, and she missed telling you about the most important things that she's done since she joined UDC not even 5 years ago, right? So I think, Professor Pippen, what I would have wanted to hear from you is that you've done two things. That you have an extensive experience with special needs students working to acquire the skills of mathematics, and so that you have used some of your skills with students with special needs in classrooms of students otherwise to actually bridge learning gaps, particularly for students who are coming to mathematics at DC, not having had extensive math histories. That's the one piece that's really important that you didn't talk about, right? The other piece that's really important that you didn't talk about is that not only do you have responsibility for the math lab, but you created a math lab curriculum that allows the math majors that man the math lab to actually become teachers while they're students, and that you've engaged many more students because of this new model. And then you move that to a virtual component across COVID. You didn't talk about any of that. If I'm President Mason, and everybody knows this MTTI, he's got a math teacher training institute that he's trying to move about. And now you've actually done curriculum at 2 levels. You would want him to know that.
True.
Okay, but you missed the opportunity to tell him. That's not an opportunity you ever want to miss. Okay.
Thank you.
And can I have one more person and then I'll open up to questions? I see Dr. Rossian has his hand up. I don't want
No,
just
but
the
that's for a
CAS
question.
people. You guys all know me.
That's a question. I can wait. I didn't mean to leave my hand up.
Okay, is there anybody else that wants to try their hand at the introduction? People are like, oh, hell no. I'm sorry. That's my favorite segment on Saturday Night Live. I guess they actually call it "Oh Hell No." But anyway, just people are like, no, I don't think I want to try it. So I can open up for questions, and I'm open to any questions that people have.
My question is, I take it my audio is on. My question is, I'm glad that everybody's here because I was in the twilight zone. I thought I was like at the wrong platform originally because nothing was happening. But my question is, when we're talking about ourselves, are you suggesting that we sort of like mute the history that brought us into the teaching arena again? Because there are a lot of things that some of us may have done based upon our professional training that I think is critical for us to incorporate into our teaching dynamic that makes students aware of application. So when we do that little brief introduction that you were talking about, are you suggesting that we just sort of like focus primarily on the things that we're doing at UDC at the moment?
So just remember this, everything that you're doing at UDC in the moment hinges on something that you did before. Now, I don't want to see your resume. if I'm meeting you in the elevator and I don't want to hear 15 pages of resume, but I do want you to say to me, I'm Dr. Nayana Rasayan. I'm a professor of psychology with a specialty in neuropsychology. The engagements that I use in my classroom really hinge on my blank number of years as a neuropsychologist with blank populations, and I'm able to, so that's the way you tie it in. You don't have to name every job, you don't have to, but I think that if I'm you and I have the neuropsychology and the neuroscience experience that you bring to the classroom, I think you want to make sure that your listener knows that, right? So I'm not just showing up here with a degree and maybe some years of teaching. I'm a clinician first.
Okay,
And my
good.
years of practice with blank populations inform the ways that I engage my students on two fronts. The ways that you engage your students as learners, but also the ways that you engage your students as humans who may also be managing some of the very issues that you have experience with it as a neuroscientist, neuropsychologist.
That's a tremendous help. And I think, I'm not the type of person to go through some kind of detailed microscopic narrative of what I've done in the past. That's great. Thanks a lot. Very helpful.
Okay, are there other questions out there?
There
So
was a
what-
question earlier in the Q&A. It did say, are you meeting virtually or in person? Has it made a difference in achieving your meeting goals?
So am I personally meeting with my faculty members or
Yes.
with my peers? I'm meeting with my faculty members virtually. And so one of the things that I do, so for the 4 trainings that we've already done around this very topic, we met virtually. I also have some follow-up with about 20 of my faculty members, all early career. In individual faculty learning circle conversations, I meet with them virtually. They're one-on-ones, and we meet once a month, every month across the 9-month academic year, so virtually. So have I seen a difference? What I will say for me, and last year was very instructive to me, this 18 months, almost 24 months now, has been very instructive to me. I've spent more time face-to-face with faculty members than I have across my entire career, because I had 22 individuals. We have 97 faculty members in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so across last year, 22 of those people met with me individually once a month. And then I did trainings like this one. I think we did 4 or 5 across the academic year. And so I had more face time with faculty members than I think I've had in the time that I've been in the deanship in terms of concentrated on an annual basis. And so I'm very pleased with that.
Is this something that you expect to continue?
Absolutely. For me, I think it will be the hallmark of my deanship. So I think that people have other kinds of goals. And so when we met with Dr. Potter last week in Dean's Council, and Dr. Potter goes around the room with us every Dean's Council meeting and asks us to share out good news, good things that are happening. And so I prefaced my remarks by saying, I think my work as a dean is more inward facing than maybe some of the other deans. And so we have good things happening in CAS, high levels of scholarship, high levels of community engagement, amazing teaching. But I think that my faculty members would say that probably the corner that we turned that was maybe most important across the pandemic was that we looked inward in terms of what supports do faculty members need? What are they asking for to feel comfortable, to understand where they fit, to really achieve balance and work toward not just success, but satisfaction. And so I think those are the things, I think I've kind of found a good place for me in terms of the ways that I can give back to my faculty members.
Thank you.
Yeah. No other questions? Can you do a poll for me?
Yes.
So I have the first question is, how many people in the room have had their first evaluation planning meeting?
And then the choices.
Just a yes, no.
Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and launch that. So you should see a poll on your screen now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I think this is only for the attendees, not the panelists. If you are a panelist already, you can also just raise your virtual hand so we can get a visual cue. And Dean Massey, you should also be able to see the hands raised.
So does it look like 100% of the room of attendees have had their first meetings?
Let's see. Yes, it looks like the majority have. If we look at
Because
the
it needs
hands
to be
raised.
100%.
Okay,
If we're being true to our contract, it should be 100%.
100%.
Can you ask, I guess maybe the poll doesn't help because not every, people are now in as panelists and so they can't participate as attendees, correct?
Yes.
Can we see by a show of hands how many people in the room have had their second required meeting with their chair around evaluation planning?
So I see 2 or 1 for the second one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Can we, let me see, this is harder to ask because I wanted to know how many people in the room participated in PDC development and actually have copies of PDC at the 3 levels that they're working from. That's too complicated, I know that. You can't put that one up.
That's a
that
good
way.
question.
But that's a really important question
Yeah.
because at this point, everybody should have participated in their PDC planning and finalization for their programs. And they should have access to the chief academic officers PDC and their college or school dean's PDC. They should have all 3. And then the last question would just be, hey, hi, Professor Pearsall. Did you want to add something? He has his hand up. Can't hear him. The last question that I wanted to ask, if there's anyone that wants a copy of the matrix that I shared, I'm willing to send that out and I can send you. The first version is just what I did for the first meeting. The second version shows me layering on for the second meeting. Me as a faculty member, I would actually engage with my chair around 3 or 4 or 5 meetings. The only 2 are required, but I think the additional really do help you document your progress toward the outcomes that you are seeking. So I can send the form to anybody that wants it. Everybody in the College of Arts and Sciences already has it, either because I've sent it to you directly or I've sent it to your chair. But if there are anybody in the other colleges and schools that would like to have a copy, I'll be glad to share.
May I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about that document that you just shared with us today on the screen. Is that the one that you shared before? Because the one that we went over just now seemed to be very comprehensive and everything was lined up.
Yeah, the first one that Mr. Cerner put on the, Professor Cerner put on the screen was what I shared with you when I did your training. The second one shows where I added what my second meeting, my projected conversations with my chair will be. So I can share that one with you as well.
That's what I want.
So I can give you the second one as well. And what will happen is I'm meeting with CAS faculty members again between the end of November and the 1st of December. So by then I would actually have information for my meeting 3 with Dr. Burton. So you would be able to see my meeting 1, my meeting 2, my meeting 3, everything there, everything documented in terms of where I'm going, progress I've made, any changes I may have to make to tweak my expectations or what my outcomes can be, and then any resources I ask for, any feedback that she may give me to suggest I don't think this is achievable in this time frame, so maybe we tweak it this way. So all of those things would be on the forms.
Well, I would welcome receiving all of that if you're comfortable or willing to share it.
Oh, no, it's meant to be a draft that's pushed out to share. One of the things that we got in terms of feedback from one of the groups in CAS was that faculty members are really seeking more templates that give them guidance, not cookie cutter, tell me what to do,
Exactly.
but just opportunity to see examples and to benefit from practices that are working for other people that can be applied across the institution.
Well, thank you so much.
I think we probably are at time, but I'll take one last question if there's one. I don't want to be disrespectful of people's time, and I'm sorry that I had so much trouble getting into the session.
No problem. And is it Dr. Pippen? Do you have a question? Or Dr. Ormond? Oh, I do see a question from Dr. Moore. So let me go ahead and unmute him.
Can we take the sharing of the screen up so I can actually see people?
Let me
Thank
go
you.
ahead and do that. And
You know,
Dr.
this is quick, and please excuse my echo. Hopefully you can hear me. I just wanted to thank Dean Massey for today's session. As you know, how critical it is to the life cycle and success of a faculty member. Just to come on and give thanks for and also for the faculty participants, because we don't know what is not explicit, and I appreciate your participation, but most appreciative of you, Dean Massey. So thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, thank you for also working with the technical difficulties. You know, that happens. So I'm so glad that it worked out though in the end.
Well, I appreciate your patience and your guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. Did you paint that behind you? It's beautiful.
No, that's
Okay.
actually a painting by a former student. I'm going to show you what I think is important about her. I think that you can see that she has blue eyes. And so I have deemed her my modern day Piccola, if you know the bluest eye.
Yep.
So I do think that she is the 21st century version of what Piccola Breedlove might look like. And I think that the student who painted Piccola, I think that this is for her was in some ways a self-portrait. And I think she was dealing with some of the atrocities that Piccola Breedlove experienced in terms of just being okay with self and finding your way and not in experiencing trauma as you attempted to do that. So, but thank you, everybody likes my Piccola.
Yeah, it's a beautiful background.
Yeah.
Yes. So just to wrap up, thank you everyone for attending today. I just wanted to go ahead and go over our next impact session. This will be on October 27th from 12 to 1 p.m. with SBPA, and it's about considerations and best practices for faculty advising. So if you'd like to go ahead and sign up for that, I did put the link in the chat box. It will be through our professional development page here at CAL. And before we say goodbye, Dean Massey, are there any final thoughts?
I want to thank everybody today for their patience, their participation. Showing up is, I know everybody's really busy, and these are really interesting times for us all. So I do hope that today was helpful. What I'd like to get is if I could get the attendee list and anybody that wants to receive the handouts, I'll get them to you today. And then as CAS progresses in this conversation, I'd be willing to share back to anybody that was here today any handouts that come out of future conversations. And Dr. Moore and I have been talking about, we're hoping an opportunity to do some work around the P1 form that you use for promotion and tenure applications in terms of ways to make it interactive and to live with you across the years leading up to the promotion and tenure dossier being submitted. So I'd be glad to share anything that we're doing, and as we move forward, we'll make sure that we just open things up as much as we can.
Yes, I'll share the attendee list with you, Dean Massey, after this is over. So if you'd like to send some of those copies over. Okay,
and the other thing is, do you guys do a satisfaction tool, a survey assessment of some sort, and you'll share that with me?
Yes, everyone that has attended and registered through CAL will receive a follow-up message with our survey feedback. Let me also go ahead and put that in the chat box. Yes. Or you know what, I will go ahead and send that to also the attendee list, the follow-up message with the survey link.
Okay.
And I'll share that with you, Dean Massey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So have a good day, everyone. Please stay safe, and we hope to see you soon for our next impact session. Goodbye.
Bye.